I'm here.
Is
Hello?
that you, Paul? Is that you, Paul?
Yes, yes, it is.
Oh, great, Paul. Great. Thank you very much. How do you pronounce your second name? Clolery?
Clolery. C-L-O-L-E-R-Y.
Clolery. Okay, thanks.
Sorry about having to call in and not be on the video, but it's a nightmare here in DC. All the flights are canceled. I'm hustling to a train station to try to get onto a train to get home.
Oh, what's happened down there?
Well, the storm that's kind of hit New Jersey and New York is coming up this way. The wind down here is just really atrocious.
Oh, really?
Yeah, New York and New Jersey are supposed to, starting around 7 or 8 o'clock, are going to start getting about an inch of rain per hour.
Oh, okay.
Wow.
Earlier today, the last time I heard, they just talked about rain in the evening. I'll have to look up the weather report.
There are these new things. They're called windows. Try looking out one.
Yes. Yeah. At the moment, it's just nice and a little bit cloudy.
Yep,
It's
there you go.
raining here, but not bad. It was a little snow
Okay,
mixed with the rain, but not bad.
What time does this kick off?
Now.
Now?
We're already recording. We're bringing people into the room, and Nicole's about to do a welcome to everybody.
Little welcome. Yeah, I'll go ahead and start. Thank you to everyone for joining us. There's some people that might be hopping in a little later, but I wanted to welcome you to this webinar. Do universities or colleges have any future in nonprofit education and training? I know it's going to be a great discussion, so I just wanted to give a quick intro before we got started. For those of you that may not be members of NACC, I just want to tell you a little bit about the programs we offer to our members. We're a membership association for schools and programs and those that support them that have nonprofit or philanthropic education programs. We do lots of activities like conferences, establishing curricular guideline, annual member meetings, these webinars, and accreditation of standalone programs. And with that, I'm happy to talk about today's panel, which will be led by John Casey, and I'll let him introduce everyone. John, go ahead.
Okay, thank you very much. Welcome to everybody to this NACC Occasional Professional Development Seminar. As you saw, the official title of the seminar is Do Universities and Colleges Have Any Future in Nonprofit Education and Training? That was a deliberately provocative title to attract you all and to get you here. Probably a more neutral title would be something like, what is the future of nonprofit education and training, and what role will colleges and universities, what role will different providers play? I'm here to be the moderator for our three speakers. Just very quick, few words of introduction. I had suggested this seminar. We do this seminar for NACC because I had certainly before the pandemic noticed the greater range of education and training providers moving into the space. And certainly when we all went online with the pandemic, in some ways the playing field was a little leveled and the competition, I think, has become even fiercer. And I personally keep asking myself, if I was in my 20s or if I was running a nonprofit organization at the moment, would I choose to go to a university college program, or would I be seeking my education and training somewhere else? And I think it's something that we all have to face. Just one anecdote, 2 days ago here in New York City was BoardCon, so an annual training conference on board governance run by a media outlet that focuses on nonprofit organization. There were 41 distinguished speakers. Not one of them was from the higher education sector. They were some executive directors from nonprofit organizations, but the large majority was an array of consultants, executive coaches, legal and financial advisors, and they were the people providing the training. And as I read through their bios, I noticed that, and I was struck by the fact that many of them used the word solutions to describe themselves and their organizations that, they offer training solutions, legal solutions. So I guess an underlying theme for this hour that we have together today is who is providing the education and training solutions for the nonprofit sector, both for workers and for the organizations. I have three distinguished speakers or panelists with me. I've got Pierre Rogers, who's the ARNOVA president, also a past board member of NACC, and she's the director of the Axelson Center for Nonprofit Management at North Park University in Chicago, and she'll be able to speak from the higher education perspective. We have Keely O'Sullivan Kurtz, who is the Director of Certified Nonprofit Professional Programs at the Nonprofit Leadership Alliance, which is an affiliate member of NACC and also has a 70-year history of preparing nonprofit workforce, offering qualifications such as the Certified Nonprofit Professional, and through their platform, through Leaderosity, offers skill development. And then finally, we have Paul Cloleary, who's the director of the Nonprofit Times, the leading business publication for nonprofit management. And if you go to their website, you can hit the training tab and you can sign up for courses through MindEdge. What I thought we'd do is we'd have a quick go round, give each of the panelists a couple of minutes to introduce themselves, and just to give a first kind of perspective on the question is, who will be providing training solutions, training and education solutions for the sector? Pierre, I'll start with you.
Thanks, John. I am happy to be here this afternoon with folks, NACC colleagues and other folks who may be joining us today. So my perspective is a little bit complex. So yes, I am in a university and I am in a nonprofit center that's a member of NACC. And, my lens is complex in that my center actually provides the non-credit professional development side of nonprofit management education. And then the folks that I deal with are nonprofit professionals and volunteers that come to us with an array of needs. I also see the competition and think about, how the competition has changed over the decades, because, back in, the 80s, 90s, we were looking at the university-based nonprofit management programs, right? And looking at the proliferation of those programs and seeing the growth. And it was just expansive. It was amazing. And I'd say in the last 10, 15 years, we've seen so much more growth in these other entities that are delivering nonprofit management education and training on the professional development side. And as you were saying, John, this board comm, the group that brought all these different speakers together, none of whom were academics, to deliver the answer. And I would say that so many folks who are working in the nonprofit sector are looking for answers, and so are much more open to the kind of marketing of solutions being offered. And there may be less patience out there in terms of, there are degrees, you can get a master's degree, you can do a bachelor's degree, you can do a doctoral degree in all of these different areas. And then I think the costs are also prohibitive when you look at, the higher education model of delivering this nonprofit management education. So it's just gotten so much more complex. And I think we really, really have to pay attention to that and think about how we are delivering what we deliver, and not just feel that, we're the experts and we just offer it and people will come to us. We really have to think about what folks want.
You're on mute still, John.
All right, I should get used to this by now. So just to say that before I go to the next speaker, I just wanted to add that in our chat room, I put some links where you can see more details of the bios of our speakers, and also Nicole Collier, who I should send out a thanks for all your organizing this, has sent out to you a document where I have put together my list and my gathering and increasingly long list of the wide range of providers that we're dealing with in the sector. And I certainly would be interested in hearing back from people about who they would add to this list. I might go to Paul next because he's on the phone. So while we can make sure we've got you on the phone. Paul, do you want to introduce yourself more and talk about it from your perspective?
Well, sure. Thanks, John. And I apologize for being on the phone instead of on a computer, simply because between the airport and the train station, because all the flights are canceled out of DC right now. So it's going to be a bit of a challenge. But if you can't hear me, please let me know, and I will try to do something else. To Pierre and to the others on the call, I don't think, first off, anything can replace the gravitas of a university degree, whether it be the degree or something directly related to nonprofit management. Nothing supplants the degree from accredited college or university. That said, the competition in the marketplace is just stunning, and it's because of a number of things: the changing demographics in the sector, the changing demographics within the population in general, and the amount of time people are spending in their jobs. I know that we do two stories. Well, we do a lot of stories a year, but two of the stories we do every year. One is the best nonprofits to work for, and we talk to a lot of people and find out why they're the best nonprofits to work for. And the other one is professional education, which we do twice a year. And what we're seeing is that so many of the nonprofit organizations have learning platforms of their own to really micro-educate their staff. A lot of them are also paying for the staff to go to outside organizations to get education in a particular area or field. But just like anything else that we're seeing in the US economy, the specialization in a particular area is what a current management team is looking for from its staff. One of the things that was startling to me, I ghosted and read behind a study by a major solution provider. I hate that word, by the way. A major solution provider who asked me to read behind them and see what I thought of something. And one of the data points they had was, as we come out of the pandemic, fully a third of the people working at nonprofits, or the nonprofits that answered the seminar or in the survey anyway, about fully a third of them will not have the technical skills needed to rejoin the organization after the pandemic, because the economy and the way nonprofits work has changed dramatically over the past 2 years, not let alone 10 years, that education is becoming very, very much more important now. But again, colleges and universities, there's no replacing them.
Good. That's good to hear. We'll follow that up. Before I pass it over to Keely, I just wanted to say in the chat, Danny Robbins said they looked up board con. I've been consulting board governance for 15 years and working in the field for 30. I don't know one of the people mentioned there as speakers. I'm not quite sure how that works as a commentary. It actually might show us how much this field is kind of growing, and how there's this way wider range of people coming into the sector offering solutions. Anyway, Keely, do you want to talk about your organization and your perspective on the topic?
I would love to. Thank you, John, for the intro. As John mentioned earlier, one of the programs that the Alliance administers is the Certified Nonprofit Professional Credential. And in my role at our organization, I oversee the various tracks individuals can take to earn that credential. So from where I sit, I get to work with undergraduate students who are just starting to have an awareness of the sector, all the way through seasoned professionals who've been working in the sector for decades. So I think where I'll be speaking from today is really from my interactions with this big span of folks in the sector. Bouncing off something that Pierre had mentioned, it definitely feels like there is a lot of space in nonprofit training and education for universities and colleges. Many of the colleges in our network, in spite of the pandemic and lower enrollment numbers and lower retention rates, they're already expanding their nonprofit course offerings. I think Seton Hall University's research shows that there are about 300 campuses across the country that offer some sort of nonprofit coursework, and we're just going to continue to see that increase. So that's already expanding into the nonprofit training. In terms of technology and training folks that are already in the sector, I was reading a LinkedIn study, and this is kind of getting to a point that Paul made. A LinkedIn study showed that prior to the pandemic, only 1 in 67 worked remotely. During and after the pandemic, that's down to 1 in 7. So many of us are spending much more time in a virtual environment. And I think that comfort level, that collective comfort level with virtual spaces translates to virtual learning and has set new expectations for people who are administering training and education to meet those new expectations.
Great, thank you. Just to tell people the way we're going to proceed, for the next 20 minutes or so, I will lob questions at our panelists. After that, we will open it up for questions from the participants. So, already if you want to put it in the chat, or when we go to the Q&A period, kind of put up your electronic hand, we'll do it that way. My next question has to be a follow-up from Paul's heartwarming or heartening message that nobody's going to replace the gravitas of college and universities. I have to say, I wonder about that. In the past, we talked about the receding horizon of qualifications, in a wide areas, what before you could do with a high school diploma, you had to do then later with a bachelor's degree, and later you needed you needed a master's degree. I kind of wonder if that horizon is regressing. For example, in the nonprofit sector, okay, there's certain markers. Everybody's going to have, they're going to want a bachelor's degree, but say, and I'm a person who works exclusively in a master's in public administration or a master's in international affairs at master's level. Could it be that a bachelor and all these, people talk about micro qualifications, could it be that in fact makes you more marketable? You're more marketable if you've got your bachelor's and then you went on LinkedIn training site and did some of their courses. I got one more email from LinkedIn this morning reminding me to sign up, and they'd give it to me for free for a couple of weeks because I actually went on their site and had a look what was there. So they've hunted me down. Pierre, Keely, Paul, any questions or comments about that?
I agree
Well,
with.
I guess I can jump. I can jump in there. I agree that microeducation is important, and we're seeing a lot of it in the sector. But that's generally for people who are already working in the sector. And frankly, it's up to the employers as well, because there are a lot of bad programs out there that are being done by solution vendors. There are some very good ones too, but the employers really have to take a hard look at whether a free LinkedIn program is really something to give somebody extra points for.
But I think one of the challenges is that employers don't know the nonprofit environment or the social sector philanthropic environment sufficiently to be able to make those determinations. I think about, looking at a range of job descriptions, and very rarely are there requirements for degrees specifically in our space of nonprofit management. More often it's simply perhaps a graduate degree that is required. Sometimes they may specify a business degree. So I think employers don't even understand the sector enough to make that determination about the quality necessarily that a prospective employee would gain from going through a program within a university versus, getting a non-credit certificate or, taking some workshops at some facility. I also think that there are so many consultants out there that are now have hung up a shingle to provide education in these different areas or training. There are folks that are just doing it. Well, I shouldn't say just, they are doing it to some degree for marketing purposes, to get their name out and to attract prospective clients. So, fundraising entities, legal firms, accounting firms, many organizations. And I'd say, John, some of the resources that you listed were perhaps more national. There are many, I think at the local level, all around the country, or at the state level, that are providing these resources. And I think employers, they may look at someone's resume or CV and they just see, oh, nonprofit certificate, and they don't go more deeply than that to ask questions about what is this person getting content-wise. And Keely, you may see or have some comments about that perspective as well.
I have so many thoughts. I appreciated both your perspectives, Paul and Pierre. And the first thing that comes to my mind is that I agree. I ultimately don't see the value of degrees flying out the window anytime soon. I think there will continue to be an interdisciplinary need in our sector. In terms of valuing a degree over a credential or vice versa, I really think that careers and learning is not linear, and folks change their mind about their career path midstream. And so credentials and the like need to be available to folks when it makes sense to them. In terms of making sure that employers, and I think this is getting to your point here, making sure that employers understand the quality of credentials, I think that is a really hard thing right now, because credentials are popping up all over the place. And there are some, I guess, watchdog organizations. The ones that come to my mind are Credly, and there's one other one that I'll think of it and I'll certainly put it into the chat. And so I think it will be an uphill battle to make sure that with the introduction of these new certificates, particularly in the virtual space, making sure that they are quality and that employers know where to point their employees and employees know where to go to get them. Credential Engine is the name. I needed to say that, Credential Engine. I'm going to plop that in the chat. Sorry to interrupt you, John.
It was Paul.
If I could just jump in there for something that you were saying. I think nonprofits are also making it hard on themselves. I noticed a couple of job listings recently where a nonprofit of moderate size was looking for a data scientist. Well, what a data scientist does is they know their database. So they're looking for somebody who is a database expert. They're not looking for a scientist. They're not looking for somebody who has an advanced degree, which the word scientist would imply. So I think a lot of nonprofits are also causing some confusion with regard to the education needed and for many of the jobs that are available.
Exactly. I see there's some questions already. If you can hang on for just a couple of minutes, I'll get to the questions. Just one more kind of to continue with the theme we're talking about is like, who is the consumer here of this material? Is it the employer, as we've been kind of talking about here, as the gatekeeping consumer who will decide, what qualifications they'll accept? Or is it the new generation of people moving into the field who are used to consuming, learning knowledge in a different way, and they're the ones who are going to end up driving it, no matter what we'd like to think of as the gravitas of colleges, or the sense and sensibility of the employers as gatekeepers. What is the new generation, and dare I say, use the term young people coming through seeking these qualifications? What's their perspective? Has anybody getting a handle on that? Again, Keely, Pierre, Paul, and then I'll pass it open to questions.
There's a lot in that question, John. So one of the things that first came to mind when you said that is, what are this new generation, perhaps of folks college age, what are they thinking? And from the students that I've been able to connect with, I really find that they are they're very aware of the issues at hand and they are not afraid to take action. And so I feel like there's a growing opportunity on college campuses across the US to connect those students with a nonprofit career. We talk nonprofit sector all day, every day, right? But it is still surprising sometimes when you talk to maybe a college student or whomever, the viability of a nonprofit career is still a question. So I think that was my first point. And then you were also, what was part 2 of your question, John?
Well, just generally who the gatekeepers and
right.
what's the attitude of a new generation of workers coming through?
Yeah, so I feel like that is my initial gut reaction to the question about the attitude of students on college campuses. And then in terms of gatekeeping credentials and certificates after the fact, I feel like it's coming from 2 different directions. It might be someone who's looking for a career path, so they certainly a new career path, so they would not be going through their current employer for that new knowledge, and so they're probably looking for it on their own. But then, I mean, I work with different organizations who want to provide professional development for all of their employees. So I don't see that as an either or. I see it coming from both sides. The other note that is coming to my mind is the question of financing. When I think about organizations being gatekeepers to employee training and employee education, I feel like one of the first things that gets cut whenever there are financial constraints is the professional development. So that was just one other thought that that came to my mind.
Paul, did you have something to say there?
So let me add to what Keely was talking about. So when I have talked to undergraduate students, and let me add that my university's focus is on preparing students for lives of significance and service, okay? However, our undergraduate students don't understand the connection between what they've come to North Park for and a career in the nonprofit sector. I have talked to parents of prospective undergraduate students who cringe at the idea of their child going into a nonprofit major because they ask, how will my child be able to repay loans? You know, how will my child live? Because nonprofit organizations don't pay. They're all volunteer organizations. So there's all of these misconceptions about the nonprofit sector that just proliferate. So that's one thing. I think also, you know, to the question of who's the gatekeeper? So, you know, I think folks who are new to the field, yes, you know, undergraduate students go to college and have lots of questions about what they're going to do career-wise. And based on experiences and exposure may end up being in this sector. And I think there's still a lot of people end up in this sector rather than being intentional about choosing this sector. That has been the case in the past, and I think it still is the case, despite, you know, the numbers of programs that we have now. But as Keely was suggesting, I think we still have to be thoughtful about both, you know, the students, that side of things, and we also have to think about the employers. And we, you know, the employers aren't going to determine our programs on universities, but because they don't understand and are not differentiating between folks who have been prepared through, you know, higher educational tracks versus, you know, adding credentials later on, that adds to the complexity. And we just have to keep in mind that there's somebody that we need to be mindful of, and that they do play a part. So it's not either or, just as Keely was saying.
Thank you. Paul, did you want to add anything?
I think that a lot of these programs that we're seeing that are not tied to colleges and universities are a little more flexible. One of the things I do on the side is I'm an emergency medical technician instructor. I've been an EMT for 39 years, and I've been teaching the EMT program to other volunteers and professionals for a very long time. And when you look at how they're studying, it's remarkable how many people are finishing the coursework at 2 and 3 in the morning.
Mhm.
So the flexibility in a lot of these programs, as we've moved more of it online, obviously the hands-on is still done very much in a hands-on setting, but the flexibility that people are needing, just because it's a different economy, it's a different world right now, the ability to finish your coursework at 2 or 3 in the morning and get the certificate and prove that you've done the work and done the work successfully is very, very important to adult learners.
Yep, and that brings up the issue of the intersection between the providers and type of providers, and then the type of platforms they're using and the way they penetrate the market. Look, let's open it up for questions. Danny Robbins, you had a question earlier and you had your comment earlier, so I'll get you to ask questions to the panelists. Yeah.
It was actually more of a statement than a question.
Okay.
I agree with Paul. I think that there are credentials and then there are trainings, and those are not synonymous. But also, I've been in this field a long time and actually a practitioner in the field. And when I started, there were lots of leaders who did not have bachelor's degrees. And now you can almost never see a leader without a bachelor's degree.
Yeah.
And even though they are vague in their descriptions that they would like a master's degree or they would like an MBA, it really is a credential that sets you apart, and students see that and benefit from that in a way that a training is not going to be able to offer.
But what's interesting, of course, is that when do trainings become credentials? And if you look at the list of the people who are training now, there's this kind of proliferation of credentials. So if I was an employer, I would find it pretty hard to wade through. Just as the same sort of thing that when we're interviewing candidates for academic positions and they give us a long list of publications, it's becoming increasingly difficult, figuring out which are respectable journals and which are predatory journals. But anyway,
Well, the other thing too,
Paul, yes.
if I could jump in there, John, the other thing that I've learned the hard way in a couple of times, there are so many credentialing programs out there that are non-academic and tied that are, again, some of them are outstanding, but there are so many out there that people can just make them up. We had a job opening not too long ago where somebody sent in a resume, and being the detail-oriented person, some people would call it another thing, but detail-oriented person that I am, I started just checking them out. And in some cases, the programs didn't actually exist.
Mm-hmm. Oh. Increasing problem. Why don't I dip into the chat room? I hope I pronounced your name correctly. Ushnish, you had a couple of comments and questions, such as, are individuals giving more value to micro-credentials? Did you want to unmute yourself and ask the question? Can you unmute yourself? Yeah.
I think some of you covered the question already in terms of micro-credentials. But I just see, just by the frequency by which I see individuals posting their micro-credentials, there must be value being attributed to those credentials by employers and others. And so I definitely see a trend. And maybe the other, I'll loop into the other comment there. I also see a trend of Ivy League universities offering more micro-credentials, and because of the weight their name carries, I think individuals value them, but also I think potential employers value them. So it's kind of an interesting dynamic that I see that many universities are offering the micro-credentials themselves, sometimes in addition to full-length programs, but often universities that don't have full-length programs in nonprofits. Yeah,
I agree. My brother wanders around Sydney, Australia, wearing his Harvard sweatshirt because he did a 2-week labor relations summer course at Harvard. So yes, I would agree with that. Sorry, I didn't mean to jump in with a personal anecdote there. Pierre, Keely, Paul, anything about that? And the kind and you talked about the kind of, or Shanice talked about in the chat room about the kind of political economy of credentials, about what any sort of credential is worth. Yeah.
So the CNP that my organization administers, it's not a credit-bearing credential. And as I mentioned earlier, there are a variety of tracks folks can take to earn the credential, one of which being I'm earning an undergraduate degree in nonprofit management, and I'll earn my credential alongside it. Something that I hope to see more of, and it's kind of a talking point that we use when folks they have their credential and they're getting ready to go out and find their first job or to get a new job, is to normalize talking about what that credential means. I love the CNP. I know it's a national credential and it does have some visibility, but to everyone's point, there are a lot of credentials out there. So I think if I could encourage both employees looking for a new job as well as employers who are doing the interviewing, ask what that credential means. What were those key topics that you covered in your credential program? And I think that would save Paul some of his searching down the road too, is to normalize those conversations.
Can I ask, Keely, I mean, in some sense, do you kind of measure or got some sense of like the value of CNP over the years? Do you think it's increased because people have known it, or decreased because there's so much competition and so much noise out there about credentials?
Ooh, I cannot understate how much noise there is, but we did collaborate with LinkedIn. They did a study, I'm trying to think, in the early 2010s about the effect of the CNP on folks' careers that have the CNP, and LinkedIn found that individuals that have the CNP are 7 times more likely to rise to a leadership position at their nonprofit organization. So the whole goal of the CNP is to give individuals the foundational nonprofit knowledge they need to be successful in the sector and to rise to a leadership position. So for us, using that study to show the value of the CNP has been helpful. But circling back to one of the first points is that there are just so many credentials out there. I was talking to someone recently on a webinar and they saw the CNP, and I think we were getting ready to do, I was interviewing someone for our conference for Elevate. That doesn't matter, but he thought I was a registered nurse, or he thought I was in the medical world, which is not the case. And so, I think just there definitely needs to be more visibility for our credential and just those ongoing conversations of what credentials mean and why you have it.
And actually, Anne-Marie, I see you've got a question, but before I get you, if you don't mind, Pierre, can you tell us a little bit more about your continuing education programs that you're involved with? You know, how does it kind of the relationship to the degree programs? How are you experiencing this kind of greater noise about other credentials? You know, what sort of people are choosing to do your continuing education programs and courses?
Well, one of the things that I've seen over a number of years is, for example, the Axelson Center at one point, we offered a certificate. It was non-credit. It was based on folks taking 7 full-day workshops with us on a range of topics. Over a period of time, we decided to end offering that certificate. Why? Because our graduate program offers graduate certificates in nonprofit management. And we, on a couple of occasions, saw folks a resume and they said, nonprofit certificate from North Park University. And it was not clear whether or not it was the professional non-credit certificate or the graduate certificate, which requires 5 graduate courses. Right? And we decided to step out of doing that because we did not want to contribute to that confusion, because we felt like a certificate from North Park University in the space of nonprofit management should have that graduate, that deep dive on the coursework behind it. So we stopped doing that certificate. So that's just one story. The folks who come to the Axelson Center programming are people who are already working in the nonprofit sector primarily, and they're looking to add skills in a particular area. Or we have, in about 3 years ago, we started another initiative, which is offering content to really push thought leadership. So it's not, and we're real clear that it's conversations about a number of issues. So for example, we've done one several times on, the state of the economy and the impact on the nonprofit sector. We did one on Black Philanthropy Matters. And, Patrick Rooney, we had Tyrone Freeman, who's at the Lilly School to talk about his book. And then we had a local foundation leader to engage in conversation with him, and I facilitated that. So we do thought leadership as well as content, but it is short term. We just did a series on nonprofit board governance that was a 6-part series, right? But again, it's short-term content, and people realize that they are learning more. Sometimes they decide at that point that they want to then apply for the graduate degree in nonprofit management here that we offer. So sometimes it's kind of a platform to bring people in and to help them understand the depth that's possible. They're not going to get it through our Axelson Center content, but that there is this option for a graduate degree. We also see and deal with many, many different, as I said, consultants or other firms that offer this content. And again, nonprofit professionals are looking for answers, and sometimes getting that answer from, going to a fundraising firm that is offering a free, 1.5 hour session, on capital campaigns is what they want at that moment. That may then lead them to decide that they want more content. And I think, someone has already mentioned price, and that matters, and time matters. Some folks have the time to devote to engaging in getting a degree, but then they think about, what are the costs? What is the trade-off? If they're going to pay $20,000, $30,000 a year to get that degree, and then they're going to have a job opportunity that's only going to pay them $50,000, and they're thinking about how are they going to repay those loans. Those are some of the questions. Is the nonprofit organization where they go to work going to support their pursuit of that education, either in time off or in some financial support for it? So all of those kinds of questions we see in folks that come to us, and we're always thinking about how to bring them in. I mean, what we do in the Axelson Center, we use guidance of the hallmarks for nonprofit managerial excellence. And so all of our programs fit within those areas for sure, but we're still within those areas trying to think about, cutting edge topics, what is an angle, or, what is a person that may be someone who would be attractive to professionals who are looking to enhance their skills and understanding.
Thank you. And Marie, thanks for your patience. Do you want to unmute and ask your question?
Oh yeah, no problem. Actually, I love having this conversation. I could probably talk with y'all until like midnight tonight about this. And I just want to say yes to everything that everybody said. It's just, to me, it's a fascinating conversation because I feel like I have a foot in both the higher ed and I guess the private nonprofit. So I am the director of the Nonprofit Studies program at the University of Southern Mississippi. We have an undergraduate minor and a graduate certificate that's available. So we don't have anything more than that. So no master's, no PhD, no BA, BS, whatever. And I'm also the board chair of the Mississippi Alliance of Nonprofits and Philanthropy, which is, of course, a member of the National Council of Nonprofits. And I've been board chair now for 2 years and part of that organization for, I think, 3 or 5 years now. It's been a while. So I always feel like I'm having two hats on. I have my, Alliance, Mississippi Alliance hat on, looking at professional training, professional development. Part of it is not even thinking about, getting people into the sector, but it's those people who are already in the sector, making sure that they're not screwing up their organization so badly that that they're getting onto the state auditor's list, that they're getting onto the Secretary of State's, bad person or, bad organization list. So, so that's been a lot of focus, but we have a credential through, the Alliance. And so I have that hat on. How do we promote that? And then the other side, I have, my higher ed hat on, how do I get, what am I doing in terms of education? And so I appreciate, John, your sort of provocative, do we have a, because that's actually a question I've been asking is, what is my role? And I guess I just wanted to throw a couple of things, out there just to maybe, I guess support something, what you've already said. So I'm not sure I have anything to say that's new, but I loved what Pierce said about, this lives of, service and civic engagement, that, that it's not education or professional development, it's education and professional development. And that throughout our lives, we do these things, in different ways. So I have a PhD, but that doesn't necessarily mean that I don't do, professional development as an educator. But the one thing that I think education also can bring is, I guess, a different perspective. And I'm thinking about Roseanne Mirabella's perspective on the nonprofit sector and that critical perspective that she brings to it. And that is not something you get when we're the Alliance dealing with, people that have their board imploding. We're not like, have you really thought about your nonprofit in a critical perspective? That's not where they're at the moment. We're just trying to save their organization at that point.
And sorry, I don't mean to cut you off, but just kind of in the interest of moving the conversation along and see if there's other questions.
Right. Well, I guess that was my question. Is there more that education is doing that we can support more than professional development?
Okay. Yeah. Okay. So that's okay. Paul, is there something you wanted to say? Or?
No, I was just going to apologize again that I got to jump off because my train is getting called at this point. But if there's anything that you guys you asked me to address, I'd be happy to do that.
No, that's fine. I just wanted to see if you had any conversations. If you've got to go, good luck with getting the train and getting home.
Yeah, I just want to emphasize that there's a lot of training available out there, that the academic centers are doing a terrific job, and they need to continue to be flexible and look at the sector and see its needs. And it's nice that there are a lot of books out there. There are a lot of consultants teaching various courses and specific areas, but without the rigors of an academic center looking at what the sector really needs, the sector will be in trouble. So you guys need to keep doing what you're doing.
Okay, thank you. And emphasizing what Anne-Marie said in terms of the perspective that academic centers can provide. Actually, there's another thing that Anne-Marie's, your words kind of brought up to me, and that's kind of regional differences, right? So I'm in New York City. You almost can't go out on the street without being knocked over by a nonprofit consultant and trainer. They're kind of pretty thick on the ground. And, that BoardCon example I thought gave was typical. You can bring together 41 of the best speakers in New York City and completely ignore higher education. Is that the same in other call them markets, and is the kind of move to online shifting that? So, Anne-Marie, as you said, you've got, one foot in both worlds. What are people finding in other markets? I don't, Keely and Pierre, do you have any comments about that?
Finding in other markets in terms of the issues?
Yeah, in terms of, is there a greater mix? Because, someone like Anne-Marie is both, in the academic world, but also in the professional association. For example, I tried to be on here in New York City. I wanted to be on the committee of one of our professional associations looking at policy, but it turns out we're not a member of the professional association, and we don't have the money to be the member of the professional association. And so I wasn't. They never invited me to be on the committee, even though I offered to be on the policy committee. So we kind of have those sorts of issues.
Well, in Illinois, we have a statewide association, and its members are comprised of nonprofits and foundations. We have a membership within that. One of the resources, so they do lobbying within the state, and then they also offer resources in nonprofit management education. So they're I call them a soft competitor in terms of delivery of content. And some years ago, we used to try to be more intentional about the way in which we collaborate. It works sometimes and other times it doesn't. But what happens is the members, the nonprofit members, look to that entity for resources just as well as they look to us, the Axelson Center, for resources. It's not making that differentiation. I mean, sometimes we are much more intentional about saying what we offer because we are part of a university. There is that extra added, the legitimacy, and as Paul was suggesting before, that's something that's really important and will never go away. However, we still have to think about what people want or think they want. So what we are trying to do is listen to what people want and give them back what they need in the framework of what they say they want. So it's this mixture. And I think nonprofit professionals are increasingly wanting useful learning. And so when Anne-Marie was talking about, dealing with a board that's imploding, and in that instance, not wanting to hear about the theoretical perspective, that's a reality. On the other hand, sometimes, students, when they're in an academic program, they're immersed in that and they're learning and they're appreciating what they're learning. And what I have found is they're extra appreciative when they can apply their learning at the time that they're learning. So for example, one of our capstone courses, students have to look at an organization and offer critique about strategic planning, or work with the organization to develop some strategic planning components. And they find that extremely helpful because they're doing, they're getting the theoretical perspective, they're getting models as well, and then they're also having that opportunity to pursue the application. So having that combination, I hear from students, is something that they really appreciate. And I think that is something that's going to be growing more, and that students will be asking for much more so going forward.
Thank you. Before I hand it over to Amanda for the question, I just wanted to pass it to Keely for a second. I mean, NLA historically has kind of straddled the world. I mean, the worlds, of university and training, and you've kind of been embedded within universities with the CMP, and you're a member of NACC. So I've always seen you as an organization that successfully straddles the world. Any kind of words of wisdom for us in that sense?
I just appreciated so much everything that Pierre had to share. I think the CNP, whenever our organization was created, we had partnerships with universities. So while we are a standalone organization, this partnership is embedded in our DNA. And I think what has made our credentials successful and lasted these decades is that we have tried to take that theoretical, our 10 core competencies, and helping our students apply that in a practical sense so that upon graduation, they are ready to be or way more prepared than their cohorts who didn't have that theoretical and practical application.
Great. And if for those of you who haven't been to the NLA website and looked at their core competencies, I highly recommend that you do that, along with NACC's curricular guidelines. I think they're excellent. Both of them are excellent guides to kind of the skills, knowledge, attitudes that we're looking at for the sector. Amanda Stewart, you had a question?
Yeah, and more of a comment, but just trying to join in. And again, Mandy Stewart from NC State University in Raleigh. Really appreciate the conversation. And I promise I didn't come to promote my own research, but I'm a part of a group of co-authors, Marlena Volk and Carrie Kinsey, who've been looking at nonprofit graduate education from the student perspective. And we're joining that research now. We've been mostly looking at it and joining kind of those who we follow, looking at it from the supply side of or I guess the demand side. I'm correcting myself. Demand side. What do students think? How do the universities approach it? But I mean, hearing y'all's conversation and some directions we invite others to join us in is from that the demand side. What do employers want? What are they looking for? And really needing to make the case for that. Because I mean, I will say just even some research that's going to be forthcoming, we see students and professionals do say graduate education is worthwhile to their career advancement. They see it as critical. But we just feel like the missing piece at this point is, what do those hiring say? And so we're really going to be pulling in a network of consultants who place executives to see how they view credentials in their screening and placement. But again, we just see it as a need to understand from a broader perspective than what, just students will probably say they're satisfied with their degree at this stage. They like nonprofit education, but what are those who hire? So I issue that as kind of an invitation if folks want to join us. I'm going to drop a link in about our research.
I was about to say, you could throw us a link to some of your research. Great.
Yeah.
So thank you very much for this conversation. We are running out of time, unfortunately. We should wrap up the official hour. I'll stay on if anybody's got some continuing conversation. Heather Carpenter wanted to talk to us. I'll pass it over to Heather to talk to us about future offerings through NACC. So thank you all very much.
Thank you. So we generally have had these webinars happen periodically. We have the recordings from all the webinars last year around managing academic programs, academic centers, student assessment. So please feel free to look at the recordings. They're there. It's meant to be a resource. We are changing gears a little bit next month. We decided to do a student really focused webinar, although academics can attend as well. But since we do have an honor society and we have many hundreds of students who have graduated from that honor society or a part of that, we want to offer this for your programs. If you're representing academic programs for your students, we have an amazing director of career services that's talking about LinkedIn, and so how to really market yourself on LinkedIn. So we really hope that you'll spread the word. Nicole will be sending out great information. We have a couple more webinars planned for the fall, and if you have any additional webinars that you'd like to see from NACC, please feel free to reach out to Nicole and myself. We'd love to hear from you. So thank you.
Good. Thank you very much. That's kind of the official wrap of time. I don't, we can stay on. People had questions. I know that Ying Lin had a question. I don't know if you want to ask that. Otherwise, thank you all very much. And we'll see you at the next seminar.
Thank you.